Alright guys, this morning we're going to be testing something on the Tundra, and I'll show you what that is. So we'll open her up, and if you can see in there. So what do we got in there? We have the FrSky S6R stabilizing receiver, and I finally got it all dialed in on the bench. Took a little bit of time. I originally got this thing last year, and when it first came out, and there was a lot of firmware bugs and this and that, and so I just kind of gave up on it for a little while. Threw it in the parts bin and followed the thread all along as the guys worked through the problems, and new firmware came out and addressed some of the issues that it was having, and it seemed to be getting easier and easier to deal with. So I eventually just decided to try it out again. So took it out, loaded the latest firmware on it. In the radio I have an XJT transmitter module in the back of my radio, so we're going to be running that. And because this is technically an X receiver, it's in the X class of receivers. So in other words, this is not compatible with the D series transmitters that I've always used. So I did end up, when I got this, after I got this, I ended up realizing I needed to get an XJT transmitter module, so I did that. But anyway, we're all hooked up, and so let's see, this is with channels 5 and 6 in the aux position, auxiliary position, because of the flaps on the Tundra, obviously. So flaps are on channel 5, so we'll see how it goes. We'll take a look at the transmitter here. Okay, as you can see in the back of the transmitter, we have the XJT transmitter module, and this is a Turnigy 9X radio that's been upgraded with the 9 Extreme board, motherboard. Well, we can talk about that another time, but that's a quite considerable upgrade. Basically, it turns this thing into a Tyrannus, if you will, with all the capability. It's running a FrSky 9X firmware, which is, or it's very similar to OpenTX. It's basically a cousin, if you will. I have channel 9 hooked up to the slider, which operates the gain. Other than that, I could show you my mixes, but I don't want to bore you. So, without further ado, why don't we get this thing in the air and see what it can do? All right, we're going to test the control surfaces, make sure everything is working in the right direction, which appears to be, and we'll test the
stabilized mode.
You know, it's in stabilized mode, and it shouldn't react to it yet, and it doesn't. So now I'll advance the slider, and now it's reacting. Okay, so we're going to start out,
Normal mode.
we'll start out in normal mode, which is basically non-stabilized. So this should be just pass through 6 channels. Now that.
Normal mode. 0.0 volts.
I had a problem before, and I recalibrated the ESC, and it took that problem out. And that problem is when I, with the throttle all the way down, for some reason the throttle is running. So, well, we'll give it a shot anyway. I'll have to recalibrate the ESC, but okay. And we're up. Alright, so let's just get her used to flying with normal mode. This is no
0.0 volts.
got a slight breeze, so we should be able to see if the stabilizer is working. So let's see. We'll make one more pass here. We'll turn stabilizer on here in a second.
0.0 volts.
That's because I don't have the voltmeter on. I have to get one. It's a different one I have to get for this particular. Okay.
Stabilize mode.
Stabilize mode is on, but it shouldn't really be active because the slider's all the way down. So I can advance the slider a little bit. Okay, now that's at half, and it's
0.0 volts.
it looks like it's very smooth now, very smooth. Looks pretty locked in. If I advance it, there's 100%. It might be 100% stabilized on.
5 minutes.
Yeah, it's wiggling a little.
0 volts.
So let's kick it back to 50% and see if that.
Flat side.
Stabilizes on. It's about 75%. It looks pretty smooth. We'll bring it back down a little. There's 50%. It's getting tossed a little.
0.0 volts.
I kicked it up to 100%. Let's see what that does. It looks like it's got maybe some high oscillations a little bit. So we'll dial it back a little. I guess you could just play with it as you're flying. It looks like it's oscillating a bit.
0.0 volts.
It's just under 50%.
3 minutes.
It's hard to tell if it's getting
0.0
tossed around or if that's oscillations for the gain, because of the gains. I'm not sure. I think it is smoother though, that's for sure. It doesn't seem to be affected
0.0 volts.
by the wind as much, which obviously it's a stabilizer, so because here we do have unpredictable breezes and winds and whatnot, so this is a good place to test any kind of stabilizer. Yeah, I think it's working pretty well, and that's on low rates.
2 minutes.
I'm gonna have to recalibrate that ESC again because of the throttle problem I had, but not sure why it did. Huh. Alright, so we're gonna test auto level mode.
1 minute.
And that should automatically level the aircraft, right? So I'll put it in first we'll test it in a bank position. So we're banking. Okay, it's still banking. Auto level. Yeah, That just nailed it.
Auto level mode.
Yeah.
Stabilized mode.
Okay, now we're back to stabilized mode. I turned it off.
30 seconds.
Alright. So we're coming around.
0.0.
Let's do... I'll test it in a dive now. We'll test the elevator
20 seconds.
reaction. So we're coming around. Banking.
10 seconds.
Okay. So we're going to dive. We're diving. Hands off. Auto level. And it leveled it right out. Perfect.
1.
Now you still have full control when in auto level, which is pretty neat.
0.0 volts.
Yeah, it's kind of, it wants to fight it back to, it's kind of weird. It automatically snaps back to level.
Stabilized
So we'll
mode.
kick it back to stabilized mode. Interesting. Alright. So I'm going to keep it in stabilized mode and I'm going to bring it in for a landing here.
Half flaps.
Flaps are down. We're coming in.
0.0 volts.
Boy, it looks really smooth. There it is. Alright. Now my throttle cut off. Uh-oh. Doesn't want to...
Flaps up.
There we go. For some reason it didn't want to come around to me.
0.0
So we'll
volts.
turn off manual. Put it on manual mode. There we go. Alright, I'd say that's a successful flight.
Throttle disabled. Normal mode.
Now I'll have to recalibrate that ESC. But there we are.
0.0
So that's it. That's the Tundra with the S6R by FrSky, which is a stabilizing receiver. And you have all the stabilizing functionality on your controller. It has 4 different flight modes you can do, but I have only 2 programmed in right now. Maybe in the future I'll program in the other 2, which are more for trick flying.
0.0
One gives you
volts.
knife edge capability, and then the other is hover, which, I mean, this is a Tundra, so I mean, maybe the knife edge I could try, but without a 6 or a 4S in there, I'd prefer not to try to hover it. That seemed to work good, and
0.0 volts.
I'll recalibrate the ESC and see if I can iron out that throttle issue.